The ground floor of the central pavilion of the Louvre's north wing is a passageway between the library pavilion on the Rue de Rivoli and the Richelieu pavilion on the Place Napoléon, now directly opposite the glass pyramid. The small rectangular doorways on each side of an archway suggest a carriageway flanked by two pedestrian walkways, and the internal construction confirms this, though the passage is now completely pedestrianised. Whichever of the three doorways one chooses to enter from the Rue de Rivoli, although the central doorway is usually barred by gates, there is a door to left and right, 6 doors in all. All three entrances lead to an open vestibule, characterized by pairs of fluted Ionic columns and by flat fluted pilasters against the walls. There are also steps leading to a doorway on each side of the vestibule. Entering from the Rue de Rivoli, on the right, west, a glass door, with arched window above, leads to the Le Fuel staircase. On the left, east, a smaller rectangular door is set in a similar stone arch. The vestibule is terminated and returned to 3 passageways by 2 pairs of columns, each pair standing against the end of a thick wall. Whichever of the 3 ways is chosen, there is a door on each side. A photograph dated October 1st, 2021, with unexplained decorations, shows 2 of these doors. That is, another 6 doors, a superfluity of doors seemingly typical of Le Fuel's architecture. There is also a typical combination of straight and curved lines. Raising one's eyes from the many vertical lines of the doors, pilasters, and columns, one sees, roofing the passageway, a multiplicity of arches, leading to groined vaults crowned with carvings. The vestibule on the Rue de Rivoli side, for instance, has 4 winged cherubs clasping their hands, which rest on a large rosette, giving the impression that they're leaning their arms on a tabletop or a roulette wheel. The cherubs' puffed-up cheeks suggest that they in fact represent the 4 winds surrounding a compass. The viewer seems to be looking down on them, though in fact the carving is seen from below. After the end of the vestibule, the passage settles to the regular pattern of a suite of 5 single columns on each side, each one set against a pier. This pier presents to the outside pedestrian walkway as 2 square pilasters. Each pier has a sconce lamp on each of its narrow sides, lighting the space between piers. This lighting is now only a supplement to the light flowing from the view behind glass to left and right of the Cour Marly and the Cour Puget. There is also a ticket office for the museum. The vestibule at the pyramid end of the Richelieu passage is similar to that at the Rue de Rivoli end. But there is also a colonnade to go through, and on the west side a doorway leads to the Café Marly, which occupies the colonnade and also has a room looking onto the courtyard. This 19th century engraving of the library staircase is not entirely accurate. It's particularly misleading in its scale. The small size of the figures inhabiting it makes the staircase seem much bigger by comparison. Le Fuel, in fact, had less space than usual in which to construct a staircase which was not included in the original plan. He was also constrained in his design by other circumstances. Other parts of the Louvre building were contiguous to the east and west sides of the staircase, so windows were in theory only possible on the north and south sides. These two sets of windows, looking out on the Rue de Rivoli and on the future Cour Marly, were designed for different facades and therefore differed from each other in style and shape. All the windows on the walls of the staircase are therefore false windows, with no view of the outside. The white stone would be lit only from above. Furthermore, it was decided that this staircase would rise to a second-floor gallery. Le Fuel's two grandest staircases, the Molière staircase and the Minister's staircase, rose only to the first floor. The Daru staircase was of course not completed until after Le Fuel's death. To fit stairs to 2 floors into this confined space, it was necessary to build a staircase that would be angular rather than curved. The stairs therefore either follow the walls of the rectangular space, or they bridge the space from south to north. The only curve of the steps is at the bottom. At the corners there is always a square or rectangular landing. If one entered the ground floor from the Passage Richelieu, there would be doors on the walls to left and right, walls which support the staircase. At this level, the stairs are not supported by arches. The doors are both topped by carvings and an oculus. Above that is the balustrade of the first landing. A little further on, there is on each side a freestanding statue on a plinth. To the right is a statue of Metabus, exiled and fugitive king of the Volscians, seated and cradling on his lap his sleeping daughter Camilla. The story of Metabus is told by Virgil. In flight he was confronted by the river Amasenus. Fearing for his baby daughter's safety, he bound her to his spear, and praying to Diana, committed his daughter to her service. He then threw Camilla to safety across the river and himself swam to the other side to retrieve her. This Camilla, carved by the sculptor Nicolas Bernard Raggi, 1790 to 1862, is evidently not a baby. Raggi nevertheless won a gold medal for his sculpture at the 1855 exhibition. To the left is a statue of Veleda. She was a historical character, a Germanic seeress rebellious against the Roman Empire of Vespasian. She's mentioned by Tacitus and Statius. In the 19th century, she would have been better known as a character in René de Chateaubriand's prose epic Les Martyrs of 1809, where she's depicted as an arch-druidess whose romantic love for Eudore, a Roman soldier under Diocletian, causes her to commit suicide. In this statue, the sculptor, Étienne Hippolyte Mindron, 1801 to 1848, has shown her gazing at the home of Eudore. The statue in the Louvre is a replica, commissioned in 1869, of a statue which had badly deteriorated in its position in the Luxembourg Gardens. Opposite the door to the Passage Richelieu, 5 curved steps, and 2 without curves where the pillars and balustrades are reached, rise upwards towards the west wall. An archway in front of us leads to steps up westward, away from the staircase. The Le Fuel staircase here divides in 2. It is mostly a double staircase. It then rises along the west wall in 2 directions towards the north and south, and then turns to follow the north and south walls. At this turning, on both sides of the staircase, at both corner landings, there are 2 windows, on the west wall and at right angles to it on the south and north walls. These windows are rectangular with arched tops, one of the forms taken by windows of the Le Fuel staircase. This shape echoes the recessed stone arches which decorate all the walls of the staircase. The upper levels of the steps are supported by arches of the same shape, raised on square pillars. They are indeed pillars. There are no classical columns here. The pillars are adorned at the corners by a vertical ribbon-like twist which continues along the corners of the arches and along the groins of the vaults to meet at central carvings. A rosette on each pillar marks the level from which the arches spring. The arches are bent out of their symmetrical shape by the slope of the stairs that they carry. The whole design is the interplay of straight lines and curves. The stone balustrade itself contrasts the curves of wasted balusters with their own parallels, with the cubes which carry on top them, and with the straight lines which contain them, following the lines of the slope or the balcony. The 2 flights of steps up along the north and south walls reach two balustraded landings, one on each side of the window above the entrance door at the east end. On these landings, door-shaped windows pierce the north and south walls, with oval sculptures above them. The flights of stairs, west to east, rising to these landings, then turn abruptly back towards the west, supported by bent arches. The steps arrive at a landing which stretches the whole length of the west wall. This west wall has a large oval central window, slightly smaller and rounder than the opening for it on the inside of the wall. It is surrounded by carving and supported by a female face. This oval window is flanked by two small rectangular doors, themselves flanked by rectangular arched windows. Round the corner from these windows, on the north and south walls, are smaller oval windows, surrounded by carving and supported by a bearded male face. From the middle of this landing, a single ramp bridges the gap, rising to what was the library door on the east wall. This doorway is rectangular and surmounted by carvings. The stairway then splits in two again and runs along the east wall, then turns to follow the north and south walls. At this corner point, another oval window on the north and south walls is surrounded by carving and supported by a bearded male mask. It is at this point that one begins to see the oval and round roof lights. The stairs turn a third time along the west wall. At the top of these flights of stairs is another landing, occupying just the central space of the west wall. In the middle of the west wall, on this landing, an archway leads to a staircase up to another part of the museum. A central staircase then bridges the gap between the west and east walls. The underside of this bridge is decorated with the sculpture of a cherub. The ends and corners of the balustrade at this top level do not have pillars, but just pedestals. On these pedestals there were candelabra dating from about 1950, which are now, since the restoration of 1993, replaced by urns with 4 lights each, similar to those on the gallery of the minister's staircase. The walls at this top level are, more obviously than lower down, broken up by recessed blind archways. The middle archway on the landing along the east wall contains a door leading to a museum gallery above the former library. The two arches on the north and south walls of the top landing contain rectangular doors. Some of the arches at this level are hung with paintings, as if they overflowed from the gallery of paintings from Northern Europe. There are paintings of parrots by Peter Boel, and there are paintings of a fish stall and a game stall by Franz Snyders. A rectangular roof light fills the centre of the ceiling. Beneath it, on the north and south walls, are oval carved plaques in bas-relief representing the genii of the arts with their attributes, and the genii of the sciences with their attributes. These bas-reliefs, like others on the staircase, notably round the oval windows and serving as ceiling bosses, are by Marie-Noémie Cadieux, 1828 to 1888, who worked under the name of Claude Vignon, or Madame Claude Vignon, taking the name of a 17th century French painter. The name Claude is both masculine and feminine in France. The multiplication of symmetries, variants, and diversities makes this staircase an artwork in its own right. It is also a subject of visual artworks, especially in photography, where its characteristics can take on an Escher-like surreality. This artistic singularity was implicitly recognized when the Grand Louvre work produced the Grand Escalator, which was completed in 1993 and made the Le Fuel staircase almost redundant as a utility. When the artist François Morellet, 1926 to 2016, was invited to contribute to the modern works which form part of the fabric of the Louvre, he chose to add to the artistry of the Le Fuel staircase by altering the appearance of the windows in a work he called L'Esprit d'Escalier, inaugurated in 2010. The word esprit in French means both spirit and wit. Idiomatically, l'esprit d'escalier is the cast of mind which provokes a witty response, but too late, only when one is going down the stairs after leaving the scene of the conversation. More literally, it means the spirit of the staircase. Morellet invests the Le Fuel staircase with further wit by adding a displacement to the ironwork grilles of the windows, so that the stolidity of the original grilles is undermined by showing at the same time a dislocation of them. The Louvre library inherited the contents of Napoleon I's imperial library, which became the Restoration's Library of the King's Cabinet. It had been situated in the riverside gallery of the Louvre, entered from the south through the doorway renovated by Dubon under the Second Republic, and later named the Porte Jean Goujon. The new library was not open to the public, but only to those dwelling in the Tuileries. As the library and all its contents were completely destroyed by fire in 1871, only contemporary accounts, such as Le Monde Illustré of the 24th of August 1861 and L'Illustration of the 6th of January 1861, describe its appearance. The library contained 3 rooms, not separated by doors. The first room entered from the staircase was the North Salon, 8 meters long and 11 meters wide. The ceiling had a painting of the 9 Muses by Adolphe Brune, 1802 to 1875, or 1880, sources vary. Le Monde Illustré says of this painting, "The dominant characteristics of this admirable composition are grace, calm, and candour. It is imbued with an inspiring simplicity whose charm is irresistible and which unites to the highest degree the good and the beautiful. Monsieur Brune is one of the greatest draftsmen of our age, and his knowledge is purified by exquisite taste. His subject allowed him to show, in the chasteness of his nudes, in his anatomical knowledge, the most varied expressions and movements. The larger-than-life figures are all equally well treated, and critics can only agree. The colouring is on the same level as the line. The effect is powerful, and we hasten to declare that in presenting his country with so capital a work, Monsieur Brune has seen his efforts crowned with the most legitimate success." A curtained doorway separated this from the main gallery, 30 meters long and 19 meters wide. This room was divided into 3 aisles by 6 square pillars on each side of the central space. The central space was occupied by cupboards for folio volumes with drawers underneath, said to be similar to those in Prince Jérôme Napoleon's library in his Pompeian villa in the Avenue Montaigne. Prince Jérôme Napoleon was a cousin of the Emperor Napoleon III. The cupboards were to be surmounted by a large clock with 4 faces in a grandiose style. The side aisles were both divided into bays lit by wide windows and separated by oak bookshelves. The whole room was divided lengthways into 6 compartments for 6 branches of knowledge: theology, jurisprudence, arts and sciences, poetry and literature, geography and history, general history. Over each section of the room, Victor Bien-Nourri, 1823 to 1893, had depicted life-sized allegorical figures with their symbols and attributes in 6 circular paintings. There were also octagonal paintings in the alcoves and medallions portraying famous writers. They are all described both as grisaille and as camailleux roussâtre, that is, either greyish or reddish monochromes. A wide archway led to the third room, overlooking the Cour Napoléon. It is seen clearly in the print in l'Illustration of the 6th of January 1861. Bookcases lined the walls. Across the centre ran a low bookcase with display cabinets on the top. These contained the 1856 bequest to the nation by the bibliophile Jean-Charles Motelet. All his valuable books, manuscripts and drawings were lost in the fire of 1871. It was his bust, by Madame Claude Zignon, which topped this bookcase. At each end of the room was a fireplace. The overmantels contained portraits of Napoleon I and Napoleon III, painted by Ernest Hébert. Théophile Gautier described these paintings in his salons of 1866. The first is accompanied by the civilizing genius of France and by the genius of war, who fly beside his triumphal chariot. The artist has depicted him as a hero, in white clothing, a laurel wreath on his head, against a dark sky streaked with lightning. Napoleon III stands out from a blue sky. He is returning from the Italian wars, waiting on events, one hand on the pommel of his sword and the other on a granite block, which symbolizes universal suffrage. He wears the uniform of a general with a light military cloak thrown over his shoulders. His expression is calm and thoughtful. Behind him, liberated Italy, supported by France, raises her left arm, from which still hangs the iron manacle of slavery, while in her right hand she brandishes a sword. Some of the leaves of her laurels are faded, some of the gold beads are missing from the necklace, and the folds of the crape veil she's removing show the mourning which has saddened her for so long. The ceiling of this room was painted by Abel de Pujol, with a replica of the painting he had done for the Percier and Fontaine staircase, which had since been demolished by Visconti. This replica was of a different shape from the original. The painting, representing the Renaissance of the arts, was described by the Comte de Clarard. In the midst of a sky burning with light, the genius of the fine arts, a flaming torch in his hand, brings from the darkness where fanaticism was holding them, painting, sculpture, architecture, and engraving, recognizable by their attributes. He encourages them and takes part in their success. Abel de Pujol's work on this copy, at the age of 76, so undermined his health that he died shortly afterwards. The library was carpeted with kamptulicon, a floor covering made from powdered cork and natural rubber, patented in 1843 by Elijah Galloway. It had been used in London for the Houses of Parliament and the British Museum, and featured in the London Universal Exhibition of 1862. Kamptulicon was superseded by a much cheaper product, linoleum. All this was destroyed in 1871. Afterwards, when the Ministry of Finance took over a large part of the North Wing, this area became the office of the minister. It still had that function under Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who was Minister of Finance from 1969 to 1974, when he became President of the Republic. The same fireplace can be seen in the same space, now occupied by the Café Richelieu. The Colbert Pavilion resembles the Turgot Pavilion, but with different sculptures. It looks closed, however. It was not intended as a public building, but mainly as barracks for the Imperial Guard. The enclosed outward appearance echoes the lack of information, written and visual, about the inside. The interior architecture is largely military and undecorated. There are classical columns and pilasters with Ionic capitals. Over the doors are sculptures not unlike those on the gallery of the minister's staircase, but each one centered on a helmet. Different helmets, different foliage, different attributes. The first floor landing has been enlivened by the display of two stained glass windows, intended by King Louis-Philippe to be real windows. Looking down the staircase in this photograph, one sees the 19th century replica of the winged Victory of Brescia, moved here from the Moulin staircase, to which it had been transferred when the niche of the Denon vestibule was demolished to provide another entrance to the manège. The Colbert staircase itself is not grand, but utilitarian, though it is graced here by a false door, not unlike those on the minister's staircase. There also appears to be a false window, through which another gallery of the museum is seen. The 2019 installation by the Armage Company of display cases for a permanent exhibition in the Halles Colbert left in sight the sculptures close to the plain stone ceiling, but the stone walls are hidden. This is one of the places where the conversion from palace to museum is apparent.